Welcome back to GBGuns and OreGear.
Yep.
Got Ryan here from OreGear,
Yep.
and I'm Graham Bates from GBGuns. We're both Oregonians, and so we were like, hey, why don't we get together and show off some of our favorites? Ryan's got an interesting one here.
Yeah, so I figured I would kind of take the beginning position here and talk about what is something I've really enjoyed, unintuitively so, but something I've seen for years and years and years and only recently got my hands on. These were kind of a commercial flop, so I wouldn't blame it if anyone didn't really know what this is in my hands, but this is a Beretta ARX100. They originally started life as the 160. That's now the military designation. Then they brought them into the US as the 160, but that's the 22 version, which is very different, but now it's the 160. Came out probably 4 or 5 years ago, and nobody cared because they were way more expensive than they said they were going to be, and they lacked some of the modularity that we've kind of become used to in the US market. But I still really enjoy this thing. It is probably the most ambidextrous gun I've ever used, all the way down to ejecting to either side, which I'm sure we'll demonstrate at some point while shooting this thing. Again, ergonomics are kind of funky, but there's something about this that's endearing, and how lightweight it is, how nice it is to shoot, it being piston driven. It's just a really fun gun. Well,
and our viewers on GBGuns are used to seeing stuff that's outside the norm,
right?
Because I appreciate it too. I remember when these came out, I want to say it was around the time that the Army military in the US was first saying, hey, we want a new assault rifle.
Yep.
And yeah, the ACRs and all the big, the UGG boot generation of rifles, which this definitely fits with the tail. I appreciate off camera, Ryan was mentioning that it is kind of fish-like in shape, and it certainly is. If you kind of swim it, you can see, although fish don't go backwards very often. But very cool setup. I think we should probably show some of those features up close.
Yeah.
At some point, and then we're out in the woods where we can shoot what we want in pretty much any direction, minus where the car and the table is and the cameras. And we'll do some shooting, and then I'd like to hear what made you choose this and what you like about shooting it, and then I'll give my feedback. I've never shot one before.
Yeah.
I remember seeing them. It's incredibly lightweight.
Super lightweight, yeah. Well, and again, like you were saying, you're no stranger to unfamiliar guns or awkward guns. And that's one of the reasons for people watching on my channel. I wanted you specifically to handle this, is with your kind of breadth of experience. I want to see how this stacks up with some of the other unconventional guns you've shot.
Of the weirdness.
Yeah.
I was able to do that, so.
Yeah, well, that's a good sign. Like some level of intuitiveness. Yeah, cool. So I guess let's show some of the features close up and then do some shooting with it.
Sounds good.
So here we have the ARX100 a little bit closer up so we can see some of the details on this thing. So first of all, as you would expect with any modern semi-automatic rifle, it does have a last shot hold open, and our mag release is ambidextrous, so I'm going to be mostly shooting the right side of the gun here, so just mirror this in your mind for the other side. But your mag release should be an intuitive position for M4 shooters out there. You just drop that out, but let's say I wanted to lock the bolt open, I can still do that without modifying my firing grip, whether right-handed or left-handed, with this little bottom lever down here. Pull the charging handle back, push that up, and now we are completely locked open to the rear. There is kind of a neat little feature with this thing, and I'm gonna flip the charging handle around to the other side. It's kind of a teaser for where this is headed, but I can move the charging handle to either side again, given its extreme level of ambidexterity, which is a fun word to say. There's a little notch. Is that hail? Yeah. When you pull it to that notch, you can pull the charging handle itself out and then just rotate it through the carrier, and then it locks open until you actually press the charging handle into the bolt. Your safety is obviously ambidextrous. It is only a 90-degree throw, so for those of you who like the short throws, there's really no aftermarket options for this thing, but kind of such is life for this thing in general. And I guess just to show on the other side, as well. Obviously this thing does fold to the side, and this is a piston driven gun, so there's no buffer system in the back here. It does lock open, and then you just pull it to open it out. I guess the Italians are shorter than both Graham and I because the stock doesn't go super long, and for those of us larger statured people out there, there's not a whole lot of options there. They said when these were first being released they were going to make an adapter. That never came. But we also have other limitations like no QD sling mounts as we're expected nowadays. We're stuck with what's built in, so I've had to finagle my way through this thing. It is an adjustable gas piston, but it's only adverse and normal, so there's no suppressed setting because they were supposed to make suppressed barrels, but then again they didn't do anything aftermarket. But speaking of barrels, one of the things that I thought was the coolest about this was how quick you can change the barrel. I mean, people like the ACR is supposed to be quick change. This kind of sets a new standard. So with the bolt locked open, just like a Glock, you have these two takedown tabs on either side, and you pull down on those and the barrel just pulls straight out. Makes cleaning super easy. You can now see the gas piston and how that works, again being a short stroke, so the carrier itself isn't moving the full length back there, and then it just drops back in, clicks in place, and then you can drop your bolt. From my experience with the 1 in 7 twist barrel, it actually returns to zero pretty well, at least close enough for what I'm trying to do and good enough for government work, which is what the Italian military cares about. And then we have the 1/2x28 threads in case you wanted to change out your muzzle device or throw a suppressor on there, which I'm sure I will be doing at some point in the future. But it's a quirky little gun. It's a fun little gun, but leaves a little bit to be desired by modern terms.
Up, fire. Right. So we've got a mostly depleted magazine in here, and I've got the magazine in my pocket because I want to see what a mag change is like theoretically with this without any prior experience or training on this platform. Heavy trigger. It was not, the button was not where I expected it to be. There we go. So even though it doesn't really have a mag well screaming at you, it wasn't that hard to get the mag in there.
So now that we've done a little bit of shooting with it, and granted you guys haven't had a ton of trigger time, but yeah, I really want to hear your thoughts kind of coming really fresh to something like this.
Yeah, so when Graham and Ryan were going through the pre-filming descriptions of it, I just kind of watched offside. I hadn't handled it until you saw me fire those first shots, and I'm kind of impressed with it. The trigger is heavy. You kind of feel like it might be unsafe, or you're behind the, in the trigger well. That's my only complaint. It's really light. It's really cool in the way that it's ambi. I think that I could probably get used to something like this. It's fun.
For me, doing the ready ups and popping through different targets, I found it really quick handling. Mm-hmm. It's very light. It does have a very short length of pull, but that also gave me a feeling of everything being tighter and closer to the body. Yeah. But the trigger, I think it was Tia described it best. You're wondering, especially with first time shooting such a different platform, if your finger is on the trigger, because you're pulling and nothing's moving. There's no pre-travel before it just goes. Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, to me, the trigger is one of the biggest drawbacks, in addition to, again, the lack of aftermarket support and all that. And the trigger, due to the lack of aftermarket support, I think there's one guy making trigger upgrades, and it's prohibitively expensive as a result of that. But yeah, it's unconventional by what we're used to, but it's not so alien that there's a super steep learning curve. And even, like you said, even with the heavy trigger, there's like no pre-travel, so it's actually a pretty short overall travel and is a pretty crisp brake for what it is when it does finally break after you've assumed that it's on safe again. I mean, to me, the way I liken this, and I apologize to my viewers if this is slightly offensive, but to me it's like a really attractive midget. Like if I were to describe the perfect woman, the odds of her being a midget are probably pretty low. However, that doesn't mean that I can't find attractive attributes in a little person. And this is probably not the gun I would design from the ground up if I were to design the perfect gun. But it's got so many cool little attributes that I love. The ambidexterity, the lightweight, the quick change barrel. A lot of those are great in theory, but maybe not so super practical in the real world. But I just, something about it, just I'm drawn to it.
Yeah, it's definitely unique, and glad we got the opportunity to shoot them.
Yes.
Like I said, I remember when they came out, and then they were announced and they kind of disappeared.
Yep.
It was sort of like the ACR.
Yep.
And then it just like all those UGG boot guns. I think I always forget the name of the one that all the Call of Duty kids love.
Oh, not the Scar.
Yeah, the Scar.
Is it the Scar?
Yeah, the Scar is the only UGG boot that lasted.
Yep.
And I think it's because they got the color right with the 50 Shades of FTE. They've got the lighter upper and then a slightly darker stock on the Scar. It looks more like an UGG boot.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the military was just looking for.
Yeah.
UGG boots.
UGG boots. Well, although I will say, in Call of Duty Ghosts, I believe it is, when they're in space, this is the space gun they're using.
Space gun.
So, Space Force.
Awesome.
Look no further.
Thanks again.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, for me, in doing the ready ups and popping to different.
Let's not do that again. Okay.